to Behind the Ballot, where politics meets real life. We break down state and federal issues, showing how policy shapes everyday Americans. Engaged, balanced, and informative. That's our promise. I'm your host, Mikkel Jenkins.
And this is Muhammad Alec also chiming in. Mikhail, it feels like it's been ages, but I think it's only been like half a week since we've actually had a normal episode. But so much
Yeah,
has happened.
yeah, so much has happened. We've had two special guests on since we last spoke, which were Brendan Gill of New Jersey 11 special election race, and then Franklin Jackson, who is running in Indiana's 5th congressional district for the New Jersey 11 race. Unfortunately, Brendan Gill did not become the victor. It was
That was
actually
a
a very
shocker of a race for everyone
Yeah, it was
involved.
a very shocking race on multiple spectrums, actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Goes
the
to show
progressive
where the
candidate,
Democratic voter base is leaning towards from the
yeah,
I think a lot of Democrats who even don't agree with progressive policies fundamentally are just very mm, hungry for the kind of idea and rhetoric, I should say, more than idea. The rhetoric that we see from a lot more of these progressive candidates is the anti-Israel, anti-APAC, anti-foreign involvement, and which is something that I think we'll really see a lot of going into the midterms in 2028.
yeah, that was really a lot of it. Malinowski, who was I think by like 9 o'clock they were calling the race for him, and then a bunch of other votes came in from Essex County, um, where the progressive candidate ended up taking the lead, and ultimately, I think it was yesterday, Malinowski conceded in the
With
race.
grace too, good for him.
Yeah, good. Definitely good for him and all of the congressional members of that New Jersey 11 area are consolidating around the progressive candidate. So it's going to be interesting to see. And then I was actually in DC for a community college legislative summit. I was talking to a few of our individuals within the community college space in New Jersey, and they were kind of worried that in the general election she may lose, just given a lot of her stances, and that for the primary it worked, but for the general election she may actually lose. So it'll be interesting to see how
Probably.
that all lays out, because as now it's been seen as a referendum against New Jersey political machine, and of more conservative Democrats and their stances and support for Israel and things of that nature, because AIPAC did have a role within this race and was going hand over fist against Malinowski on a lot of opposition attack ads. But within those ads, they didn't really specify, who's the better candidate. So everyone just ended up going with the progressive candidate and ended up obviously pushing them over the goalpost. But outside
Yeah.
of that, we do have a whole list of other items on the agenda today. Going to be starting with the Jeffrey Epstein scandal and related investigations, including the Pam Bondi hearing that was earlier today, which I was able to watch in full.
Oh man, I
And
wish I could have watched it in full. I was at work and I'm probably could have just put it on for audio, but
yeah,
the clips that I was seeing, man, something some interesting I felt like I was watching teenagers. And not like
yeah,
at the Congress members who were asking questions, but more specifically at Pam Bondi. She
yeah,
had little flashcards of insults for specific Congress members to
yeah.
like
I think
to
she called
roast them.
Naylor a washed up loser, lawyer or something like that during
Yeah,
an
she
exchange. But
called.
yeah,
She said Massey has Trump derangement syndrome. I'm like, the guy votes with Trump like literally
literally.
91% of the time. I'm like, but you just focus on the 9%, and the more you focus on the 9%, the more people are going to see like, what the hell are they? Why are they arguing against releasing the Epstein files? Why are they for all this federal foreign war involvement? And I think I'm just waiting for like mm, for the moment Bondi realizes that she is really in deep water here. Because I always like to bring this up because it's so true. Watergate was nothing compared to the Epstein scandal. Nothing.
Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the massive waterfall of individuals that are tied within this whole Epstein files. And as we know,
Absolutely.
the
Now I just want to add one thing.
mhm,
And with when it came to Nixon, he didn't go to jail, but his attorney general did. So that's why I like to occasionally bring that up when we mention Pam Bondi, because
Yes.
I am, especially since she is going against the Epstein Transparency Act, which is congressional law now.
Yeah. It's
It's
been law for about 40 something days, maybe even 50 at this point since we last spoke. But yes.
Yeah. So, like, she's
Yes.
clearly violating the law,
Mhm.
clearly violating the
100%.
law. And I remember when I saw when Massey was asking her, like, "Why have you redacted these names?" You know, part of the Epstein Transparency Act is that if the DOJ finds names to be required to be redacted for safety or more reasons, they have to issue or, like, state what their reasoning is in this case. And there is no reasoning at all provided for most, if not all, of the names that are redacted in the Epstein files. And then she just went on a tangent trying to insult the guy with Trump derangement syndrome. And I really think that the next few months are going to be interesting.
Yes, I agree. The next few months definitely will be interesting. We're going to dive into this investigation and more that has been released regarding the files because there were new letters and things of that nature that were released. So, as we all know, the Jeffrey Epstein files remain a major source of controversy and political tension, with new revelations ongoing with the scrutiny of the 2019 death of Jeffrey Epstein while he was in custody. And there are high profile calls for accountability. Attorney General Pam Bondi's recent appearance before the House Judiciary Committee today marked a highly contentious oversight hearing where she defended the Department of Justice handling of the Epstein files amid widespread criticism over redaction, transparency issues, and victim treatment. There were a lot of victims within the hearing room.
I'll
And
be
as I
right
was saying, I was in DC yesterday, so I actually wish I was able to be there. But there's a very telling photo of all of the testifiers raising their hand, basically stating that they have been ignored by the Department of Justice when it comes to testimony and things of that nature. And then in front of them, it's a picture of Pam Bondi is there as well. So it's a very telling picture, kind of how the Department of Justice is not listening to these survivors of these horrific acts from Jeffrey Epstein and or the cabal of individuals that have done major harm to them. The hearing, which lasted several hours, featured explosive exchanges while Pam Bondi was clashing repeatedly with Democratic lawyers, refusing to answer questions on the Epstein case and engaging in personal attacks, including calling Representative Jamie Ranskin, not Jerry Nadler, a washed up loser lawyer during a heated moment. One
She
lawmaker even stormed out amid the confrontations.
Do you know why she stormed out?
No, I didn't really
This is
get
insane
yeah,
and shows just how backwards anti-Semitism is nowadays in terms of what you get accused of being by it. So Pam Bondi accused, I'm blanking on the congresswoman's name, but she's Jewish. Her grandfather died in the Holocaust. Grandparent, just
yeah.
so I can be fully correct. She had a grandparent die in the Holocaust. Pam Bondi accused her of being anti-Semitic because she didn't support Israel.
Mm,
And the woman was like, "Are you serious? Like, I am literally Jewish. I literally had family die in the Holocaust. Like, are you serious?" And then Pam
yeah,
Bondi just like doubled down on it.
yeah. It's
And I
just
mean,
disgusting.
this is I. I've been in the realm where people have, since I'm Muslim and very unorthodox with my opinion, I've been told by some that I hate the faith or the creed or just in general, I'm not part of the religion because of my views. And let me tell you this, religion is an extremely personal thing. No one can tell you how much you believe in God. No one can tell you if you do or
Yeah,
don't. No one can tell you how to believe in God or worship God. It's all up to you and what you do. And to have a non-Jewish woman tell a Jewish woman you hate Jews because you don't support the Jewish state of Israel, the Jewish ethnic supremacist state of Israel, as she also actually dealt with the first hand, I should say second hand, because now it's the generational trauma that goes down. But as she dealt with the secondhand trauma of her family being, victims of the Holocaust, it's just you can't the truth is stranger than fiction sometimes, and this is just such a good example of how far people are willing to go on the pro-Israel side to try to control the opinion that is being spewed by people, and they're running out of cards, and the card that they have that has been completely overplayed, it's the anti-Semitic card.
yeah. It really has been overplayed, and
So much.
they were also even talking about Don Lemon in terms of what was going on with all of that. situation. But in her opening statement, Bondi described Jeffrey Epstein as a monster and exposed deep sorrow for the abuse endured by his victims, stating she was deeply sorry for what they had suffered. She directly addressed survivors present in the room, urging them to come forward with any information about their experiences, and emphasized that the FBI is actively seeking to hear from them to pursue remaining leads in a long running investigation. She also highlighted that a large team of over 500 attorneys and reviewers had spent thousands of hours reviewing millions of pages of documents on a compressed timeline to protect victim identities, defending the DOJ's efforts despite criticism of sloppy redactions that inadvertently exposed some survivors' names and private details, including nude photos and earlier releases. She continued to insist the department had moved swiftly to correct those mistakes by removing problematic files once notified and pledged thorough investigations into any criminal wrongdoing related to mishandling. Bondi has faced intense pressure from Democrats who accused DOJ of running a massive Epstein cover up for the Epstein class, shielding powerful predators while exposing victims' information and failing to meet with survivors. Rep. Pramila Japal challenged Pam Bondi by asking Epstein victims in attendance to raise their hands if they had not yet been able to meet with the Department of Justice about their abuse. Every survivor present had their hand raised. Japal then pressed Bondi to turn and apologize directly to them for the
Lying on their name
unacceptable
and their
release. Yeah, for the
lying on their name
unacceptable
and
release
trauma.
of
Seriously,
sensitive
sick.
victim information, but she refused, declining to offer a personal apology or to get into the gutter, as she says, with what she called partisan request. Instead, she demanded Democrats apologize to President Trump and accused critics of these theatrics. Bondi also indicated that the DOJ has pending investigations into possible Epstein co-conspirators or individuals tied to his crimes without elaborating on certain specifics, targets, or timelines, though she referenced prior directives from Trump to probe connections involving prominent Democrats mentioned in the files. Mind you, just Democrats, not Republicans were mentioned.
Republicans. She
Yep.
redacted a few private businessmen names who are in cohorts with Trump too. And
It's
she was
terrible.
asked, "Why'd you redact these names?" And because, as we mentioned earlier, it's part of the Epstein Transparency Act that if you're redacting names, you have to provide the reasoning why. Like the whole
Yes.
point was, well, if it's a national security issue, well, how is it a national security issue that these private billionaire businessmen are in the files? How is that a national security issue?
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's daunting and suffocating to hear that it's a national security issue to allow to release these names, even though that they are just entwined within this, hellish, as I keep saying, cabal of
The more
individuals.
you look into it, dude, literally the worse it gets. Like you think it's
Yeah.
bad. You hear child rape and murder, and you're like, "That's bad." And then you hear the details, and it's literally like, "Ha, this is insane. This is so sick and insane." And I mean, I really think that so many people who are willing to just overlook this really are immoral. And I mean, there's like a line in politics where I can say, like, well, I know people just want to, there are hypocrites. Most people are hypocrites. Most people have double standards. They're willing to overlook something that their own party does when it's a benefit to them, when they would normally disagree with that if the other side were to be doing it. But in this instance, if you are choosing to purposely ignore Epstein files or just this whole situation because you just like Trump so much, eh, I if you believe in heaven and hell, you better be repenting
Yeah,
quite
it's
heavily.
a very fine line between supporting Trump and then also understanding that he is tied into all of this Epstein
Directly
stuff.
into it.
It's very it's scary how individuals have blind loyalty and support for Donald Trump, especially within this just this one issues, let alone. And continue on with the hearing. The hearing extended beyond victim treatment to broader criticisms, including Republican Representative Thomas Massey blasting extensive redactions such
I
as
love this man.
blacking out names like billionaire Les Wexner, who was previously identified by the FBI as a potential co-conspirator, and accusing the DOJ of insufficient transparency despite the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Bondi responded by attacking Massey personally. In my opinion, that's when you have lost any argument, especially political argument, once you start doing personal attacks. And
I
she was
also want to
suggesting,
add,
yeah,
Trump himself attacked Massey's dead wife,
he,
and then
yeah,
he
I remember
attacked
that.
his new wife,
Yeah,
and
it's
I
been
was like,
reported
dude,
that.
come on.
Yeah, very low blows, but
What do
nothing
you expect from
surprising
these people
from the Trump administration.
at all?
Um, so, as Muhammad was saying earlier, she was suggesting that Massey had Trump derangement syndrome. Democrats, including Representative Ted Lieu, accused Bondi of lying under oath regarding President Trump's ties to Epstein and questioned why no prosecutions had occurred against alleged patrons or enablers such as Prince Andrew. Bondi deflected by pointing to her predecessor's Merrick Garland's tenure and emphasized ongoing probes directed by the U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton in the Southern District of New York. This testimony ties into persistent questions about Epstein's death, including newly released documents with graphic postmortem photos, an autopsy noting fractured thyroid cartilage, which is consistent with hanging but scrutinized for inconsistencies and prison records. A draft death statement was dated August 9th, 2019, one day before Epstein was found dead and ruled suicide, raising speculation about foreknown knowledge, though the DOJ attributed it to a typological error,
Type.
which anyone would in that scenario, before issuance. And then surveillance logs show an unidentified orange shape, which was reported, I believe, sometime last year,
Yeah,
actually.
a year plus ago.
Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember seeing
this
that. That's so funny to me, like a menacing orange
yeah,
figure.
this orange shape approaching Epstein's locked tier at 10:39 p.m. while Inspector General logs indicate an officer delivering bedding. These discrepancies have fueled ongoing conspiracy theories and demands for further investigations. Politically, Representative Thomas Massey has called for Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, a Trump ally, to resign over these ties to Epstein, which were revealed in the files, including a 2012 lunch on Epstein's private island that contradicts Lutnick's prior claims of no post 2025.
With his
2005
family and
contact.
kids, by the way.
Yeah, family and kids were over there. So, um, Massey is co-author of the Epstein Files Transparency Act and insists that Lucknick has a lot to answer for, intensifying scrutiny on cabinet members linked to the late sex offender amid broader calls for full disclosure. I do believe in April there's going to be another hearing, but yeah, I mean there wasn't really a lot that came from this, unfortunately, and there even wasn't even a lot that came from when Ghislaine Maxwell was doing her deposition, where she just pleaded the fifth and basically stated that she would clear Trump's name only if she would get a pardon, which we all knew that this is that's where this was all heading to. That Maxwell would want a pardon to be able to free Trump's name and any wrongdoing that she has been accused of, basically. And I hope that is not the case because morally, I think that everyone would just run out of the MAGA camp because it's
You would
basically
think. You
it's
would
basically
think.
a stamp on approval on all the things that Ghislaine Maxwell has done, if she's able to get this pardon. And I think Trump would be smarter enough to not allow that to happen. And then I kind of want to speak into the DOJ videos and things of that nature because I was seeing reports that actually that the prison guards actually switched out apparently the bodies. So it's like they tried to trick the media as they were like outside the jail during the death, and they had a fake body go in one van and another one go into an unmarked van as well. So all these things and all these inconsistencies are very rightly so fueling a lot of these conspiracy theories, which have now been almost seemingly true
Yeah.
as more and more information comes out. And as we continue to get more information, we hope our listeners continue to come to Behind Ballot and listen to all of our in-depth takes. Now we're going to be moving to progressive challenges and democratic gains. Yes, Mom, you gonna say something?
No, I'm just scratching my cat right now.
Oh, all good. Yeah, I got my dog here right here too.
He's a cute little guy.
Yes, he
Here,
is.
let me bring my cat to the camera. Come here,
So,
Cleo.
looking at progressive challenges and democratic gains, the progressive faction within the Democratic Party experiencing a resurgence, highlighted by Senator Bernie Sanders' strategic endorsements and recent electoral successes that signal potential shifts in party dynamics. Could be a potential Democratic Tea Party on the rise. Sanders, emboldened by the unexpected victory of Anelia Medja in New Jersey's 11th congressional district special House primary, she narrowly defeated incumbent Representative Tom Malinowski, despite heavy opposition from pro-Israel groups, and targeting additional upsets. Major's campaign, which emphasized a $25 minimum wage, abolishing ICE, and rejecting certain anti-Semitic definitions.
25 minimum wage is
Yeah.
crazy.
And this resonated with voters, leading her to edging out Malinowski by over 300 votes amid significant external spending. Sanders has endorsed candidates like Nita Alum, who is challenging Representative Valerie Fauci, I believe I'm saying that right, in North Carolina, and Brad Lawner against Representative Dan Goldman in New York, drawing comparisons to progressive figures like New York City Zoran Mondami for their anti-oligarch and anti-Trumpism stances. This momentum is further emphasized and has further evidenced by Democratic overperformance in special elections, such as Chastity Martinez's decisive 62 to 38% win over Republican Brad Daigle and Louisiana's House District 60, a seat carried by Trump by 13 points in 2024, marking a 37-point swing and denying Republicans a pickup in a district that has historically supported Trump at local levels. We're starting to see the cracks in multiple areas, and building on these gains, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is expanding its target to include 5 additional districts Trump won by narrow margins in 2024, which include Colorado's 5th congressional district, Minnesota's 1st congressional district, Montana's 1st congressional district, South Carolina's open 1st district race, and Virginia's 5th congressional race, among aiming to net the 3 seats needed to flip the House amid optimism from 2025 over performances. In Virginia, Democrats have advanced a redistricting proposal that would shift the current 6-5 delegation to a 10-1 Democratic advantage, creating 4 new pickup opportunities to counter Republican gerrymandering in other states. With the map passing both chambers and awaiting the newly seated Governor Abigail Spanger's signature. So we're really seeing the cracks all around in the House, and we've seen that Democrats actually voted in turn with Republicans to allow a rule to fail, and that rule was it was a measure to block anyone bringing up the validity of Trump's tariffs, basically.
Yeah.
The Republicans did not have the votes to uphold that rule, so now Democrats can go ahead and start having debate on these tariffs. But yes, we're seeing a lot of Democrats outperforming Republicans in all of these key areas. And those 5 districts that I just stated, we're going to be watching closely. Hopefully, maybe getting some of the challengers on here. Actually, that would be very nice. I'm sure our guests would be really appreciative of that. But it's they're going to be running scared once November comes around. Um, I truly think they're worried about even losing the majority before November, because as members keep continuing to resign and not looking to run for office, I think there's another member who's been thinking about just resigning, and not even
Waiting the
continuing the
time.
rest of his term, basically, which would be what most Republicans would do. Just don't run for reelection and finish out your time. But there are others that are actually just resigning outright and just having special elections in these races. So I believe the total count is almost at 30 Republicans, possibly 25 to 30 Republicans who are not going to be either seeking reelection or have resigned. So Republicans are going to be in for a lot of handcuffing once these midterms roll around and once these special elections are over too.
And
Um,
what I
yeah,
wanna add on top of all that, first starting off with how well progressives have been doing in the Democratic sphere, I think a very large amount of Democratic voters, I am one of them, view Israel, AIPAC, and that in general foreign influence on our elections and on our politicians as a top issue. So much so that I'll be honest here, I care so very much so about economics and taxes and more. I'd be willing to vote for somebody who says things I completely disagree with in those regards if they're just anti-Israel and anti-APAC. Because I think that, as we've seen with the Jersey race that just concluded, that it really does go a long way for people to see the message being said by politicians of, hey, we've also had enough of the foreign influence on our politicians. We don't agree with it, and we are willing to fight for it and take
yeah,
that risk of putting our head out there saying, hey, we know that APAC and these, rich foreign lobbies are going to be putting money into our primary opponents and also just against us. But despite that, I'm willing to take that risk because it's what's right. You
yeah,
can't, we see a lot of these politicians in general just live dishonestly and put their morals in the back seat so they can gain the power or the seat, a position of power. And that may have worked for a long time when before Israel was really put in the limelight and the foreign influence that we have on our elections and on our politicians was really displayed. But now it's just the cat's out of the bag. Like, you
yeah. It's
can't put the
completely out of the bag.
toothpaste back in the tube, it is out.
And I mean,
And
they were spotted. I mean, and people were calling out that they were under a different name. I think it was United Democracy or something of that nature was the super PAC that they were running
they're
within
trying to use
New
American
Jersey. So
lingo
yeah, they're
against us.
exactly. They're I would say a shadow pack at this point, a shell pack at this point, just using different names in different areas of the country to hide that it is a pack that is actually funding these operations and so forth.
Yeah.
It's terrible and truly disgusting just how far they want to go into controlling our elections. And I love that this was one of the many rebukes that we will be continuing to see from APAC, and I love that it happened in New Jersey first of all. And wanting to move on to
Wait,
immigration. Yeah.
I wanna add a
Mhm.
few more regarding the elections, and now specifically moving on from the progressives to the Republican portion of things,
Yeah.
is that I really you hear it all the time of how Republicans are, like, behind the doors, very against Trump because they think he's an idiot, and then they come out with the cameras and the TV on, and they just, get on their knees and put on the knee pads like they're daddy's good boy.
Yeah.
And it is something that they've been rightfully being criticized for, and we've seen it, even I'm blanking on who it is. It was a former Republican congressman who has, like, a talk show now, and he said that he's like Lindsey Graham, for example, one of Trump's biggest supporters, criticizes him endlessly behind closed doors, and he's like,
Oh,
"He
it was oh my gosh. Who is
yeah,
this
I'm
guy?
blanking on the name, but it's on the tip of my tongue." And it's just an example of really, like, how things are for behind the scenes.
I know it was Eric Swalwell. He's Democrat, but
Swalwell's Democrat, yeah.
he has talked about how Republicans have talked about Trump though as well in like his circles and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, they understand this the ship is falling and that the
That's why
cracks
so
are
many of
coming.
them are resigning. They don't wanna go
Yeah, they don't
down
want to deal with it. I mean,
they
I
don't
wouldn't either.
His
I
grace.
would
Yeah,
not
I
either.
wouldn't either. I mean, as the saying goes, I mean, "Made your bed, now you gotta lay in it, or the chickens are coming home to roost," whichever
Yeah,
one you
exactly.
prefer, whichever one you wanna say, they both apply here.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think that it's really, the Republicans are absolutely gonna deserve the House bloodbath that they're going to be, sentenced to. And I think that the fact that there's even like a 40, I think according to the prediction markets, it's like 38% now that Democrats can win the Senate
Yeah,
even.
the Senate. Yeah, which
That was like
is
10% a year
yeah,
ago,
yeah,
and
it was.
more than tripled, almost nearly quadrupled in support because of how much the the people are disliking Trump and his motives and his policies.
Yeah,
And I wonder, what I want to see more than anything is I wonder at what point the Republican politicians are going to say, enough's enough. We can't continue to back this guy. I really think that the second the midterms are up, they're going to go against him.
I think the first pill that they swallowed was Venezuela. I
Yeah.
think the second pill
I mean,
was
there's like neocons who want stuff like that, like, Rubio and Graham.
yeah, but I think
And there's a
majority
lot of
of them are
conservatives
still
who aren't
like
who aren't
cautious
that's why
of
they're
it.
called neoconservatives, because they don't have actual traditional conservative policy, but they try to tout some things like the economics, they try to tout things like taxes,
Yeah,
they try to argue that they are conservative in those regards, but then they're very, very open about invading other nations and
yeah, very
bombing other
hawkish,
nations.
very
It's a
very
very
hawkish.
it's a very democratic thing for them to do. I
Oh,
don't want to
without a
use the
doubt.
term liberal because liberal is people often attribute liberal ideology to the Democrats, but liberal really just means live and let live. That's literally what
Yeah,
liberal means. Like, yeah, I people can live however they want as long as it doesn't affect others in a poor manner. But but bombing other countries is not a liberal idea. It's
no, yeah,
just more rooted baked into the idea of the forever war party, which is quite a bit of the members of Congress on both sides. And so we have so many people who are still part of the forever war party, and I mean, that's why the term uniparty exists. That's really what it is that these people will always find a few things to agree on. Israel supports one of them. People are fed up with that. The
yeah.
Forever Wars is another one of them. People are fed up with that. And I mean, there was actually a fantastic example, just showing on the Democratic side of things that not 91% of Democrat voters don't think we should send more money over to Israel. Meanwhile, about 80% of Democratic politicians vote to send more money over to Israel.
Of course.
And it's just an issue that isn't unique to the right. But I think what is happening now is that the spotlight's on the Republicans. They're the
Yes,
ones
it's
at the
very
House,
much
the
so.
Senate, and the White House. They should be the ones who can do everything and get it all done. And they have been crashing and burning, and they have been dealing with Trump's poor rhetoric and his poor policies, which is largely, from my understanding, driven by Stephen Miller, honestly. But you can't really, I'm not going to just go around pointing fingers and at smoke. What I will say, though, is without a doubt, we can see that Trump's the man in charge. We can see without a doubt his policies are not liked by Americans. We can see without a doubt the economy's not doing well. People are fed up with what ICE is doing for the most part. When 2/3 of the country says this is a bad idea, we don't like this, any reasonable politician would say, all right, cool, let's do what the two
Yeah,
thirds want, and that is just not what we're seeing out of the Conservative Party. And I am I'm not a vote blue no matter who guy, but in this instance, I'm very excited to see the bloodbath against the Republicans because none of them, except for Thomas Massey and a few others, deserve to actually be reelected because they've
yeah,
thrown away their ideology and their morals just because they're afraid of Trump. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, but you can't live life afraid. If something scares you, that should motivate you more to do what scares you. Like for example, if moving to a new country scares you, if moving to a new place, if doing that specific action scares you, there's a good reason why you should do it. And I think what we see here more than anything is that these Congress members are terrified of a primary against them backed by Trump. And I think Massey is a perfect example of if you go against the fear, you're still going to come out on top, if not even better. Because now
yeah,
Massey's coming out as the guy with the morals, the guy who's actually fighting for what's right, and also he's predicted to win the primary against
yeah. Him
somebody
and
who's been heavily backed by Trump, heavily backed by Israel, heavily backed by APAC. Miriam Adelson and a few of the other billionaires have thrown multiple millions against Massey, and he's still projected to win.
yeah, him and Rokon are pretty have been pretty bipartisan, have been pretty having the leads in bipartisanship, and have been able to show the country that two individuals from two opposite sides of the political spectrum can come together on a certain issue, and that issue being the Epstein files.
I mean,
And that's important for Americans to see that not only they have differing opinions on various issues, but when it comes to the importance of Americans wanting to get justice for Americans, that these two individuals are coming together, and there's multiple calls for Ro Khan to level up in the areas of democratic leadership. And I would completely agree with that. And the same thing with Massey as well. I would love for him to be on the leadership sides of things, but I know with Donald Trump in office, that is something that
it's
is
not
not
not gonna
going to
happen.
happen. And
Yeah.
along with, as I was saying, the pills to swallow that Republicans have been taking and are now starting to rejecting. One of them being the the capturing of Maduro. The second one being all of the lawsuits against Letta James and Jerome Powell, and also the Supreme Court decisions regarding the independent agencies. All of these various pills, and then also the pill of the Obama video that Trump had posted, depicting the Obamas as monkeys and all of the other high-ranking members of the Democratic Party as other animals and so forth, and
I'm
saying that it was a staffer that
I
ended up
me
posting it, which is pretty ridiculous.
I remember people were like, "He's just referencing Lion King," and I'm like, "So he could have put anybody as the
Anybody
gorilla and
else
monkeys then.
as
He could have put
yeah,
anybody, no, specifically Michelle and Barack Obama, who he put as the monkeys." And I remember, oh man, one thing that I Tim Scott, the senator, I believe he is, from South Carolina, black man. He was like, "I can't believe that the president will put something out like this." I'm like, "Bro, come on now. Come on.
are we sure?
This is the man who called for the ex death penalty for an innocent group of men who were wrongly accused of rape and murder in Central Park. This
Yeah,
is the
it's
man who
completely
has said he
ridiculous.
doesn't like to hire black people because he doesn't trust their confidence in his casino competence in his casinos. What more do you need to see from somebody before you think, I don't think he has my interests in mind? And actually, I say that, but I know so many Muslims who still now will support Trump because they're like, oh, well, he's better than the alternative. I'm like, dude, you're voting for a guy who quite literally hates everything that you believe in. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah, completely.
delusion, Trump derangement syndrome shouldn't be about people who dislike Trump. It should be about people who are quite literally licking his heel like he's the
Trump
next coming of
acceptance serum
Christ.
should be something like that. Um,
Literally, I'm like, dude, I'm not deranged for Trump. I don't like the guy. You're over here worshiping him like he's the next big deal. Like this dude doesn't even know how to. He's got dementia. He shit himself on camera. I don't know if you remember that. It wasn't a. He sharted himself. It was so funny, but it was like a quick 10 seconds. The media was like asking him questions, and then you could just hear like a very, very wet and guttural.
an inconspicuous
And then
curdling.
seconds later, all the staffers come into the Oval Office like, okay, that's enough. That's it for today. That's it for today. And I was like, oh my god, man, this is crazy.
No,
Yeah,
that is crazy. And then continuing wanting to continue on our topics here, and just going to jump around because we were actually talking about elections and so forth with the midterms. So I kind of want to dive into election integrity, voter laws, and the midterm dynamics going forward. So Republican-led efforts to reform voting laws are facing internal divisions and Democratic oppositions as midterms loom, with President Trump intensifying threats amid fears of losing. So the Save Act, the Save America Act, which is backed by Trump, amends the National Voter Registration Act to mandate documentary proof of citizenship, like passports or birth certificates, for federal voting. My girlfriend just got home.
eagerly.
Photo IDs for in-person and absentee ballots, and penalizes for non-compliant officials, aiming to combat perceived fraud, but criticized for potentially disenfranchising millions of voters. And I do not agree with the Save Act because it is a cover up for a poll tax, which we all know is unconstitutional, because they're asking things for individuals to get IDs and passports and things of that nature, which aren't free. So realistically, those items would have to be free of charge for individuals to get, so that they can go and get these IDs, passports, other pieces of identification, to ultimately be able to vote. Similar provisions emphasize in-person verifications for mail-in ballots, which Trump has actually stated that that Congress is inherently void due to the whole mail-in ballot scenario, which is pretty daunting, given that he also received mail-in ballots, and you have,
Of
I
course, the
think it's
mail-in ballots for him are legitimate and
yeah, for him
free,
are
but
legitimate,
for
but
the
for
other
everyone
ones are
else,
not.
they're just not they're not legitimate at all. Senate Republicans are clashing over using a talking filibuster to pass the bill with a simple majority, exhausting Democrats. Though leader John Thune expressed skepticism about having the votes to abolish the filibuster despite Trump's pressure, because they understand if the filibuster is broken, that paves the way for Democrats to be able to use that as well once they are poised to take back the Senate. I'm sorry, the House. No, the Senate. Sorry, Leader Thune is with the Senate. My apologies. DOJ failed to indict six Democratic lawmakers as well over a video urging refusal of unlawful orders, which was labeled as seditious by the Trump administration, which is now being pursued by U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro, but it has been rejected by a grand jury. So we're seeing not only attack on the electoral system with the Save Act, which how they are propping it up, and their talking points, as well as him trying to go after sitting members of Congress and actually arrest them. So Trump is escalating his election threats, posting over 30 discredited fraud claims since mid-January and suggesting midterms um, might not occur, and preparing to seize machines, intimidate voters, and limit participation amid unpopularity, risking a Democratic wave and impeachment. And then in Georgia, we all know in Fulton County, challenges the FBI's January seize of 700 boxes of 2020 ballots as a callous disregard for constitutional rights, seeking their return in court before Trump appointed Judge J.P. Bewley. And there's a lot of anxieties, which include private polling indicating a risk of losing 53 to 47 Senate majority, potentially crippling Trump's agenda and inviting impeachment, prompting urgent strategizing by Democrats on all levels. Trump has reversed an initial snub by allowing Democratic governors into a White House meeting. As we know, he invited just the Republican governors to a certain meeting, and that was giving me House of Cards vibes. If you remember, Muhammad, when Frank Underwood had all the governors in his meeting, and he was talking about election security and polling centers for safety. This is kind of what the vibe was giving me when I was hearing all this. But I am glad that the governor's organization actually ended up shooting down that invite and have not attached themselves to that meeting. And we're going to be tying what this meeting was kind of almost looking like was going to be about, which was having ICE agents or ICE personnel at polling places and or during the election cycle. That's going to tie into a lot of the demands that Democrats have been trying to push recently for ICE, because that those negotiations are happening within this week actually, and Friday is, I believe, the cutoff date for those negotiations. And when I was in DC yesterday, I was actually meeting with members of Congress, just focusing on community college legislation priorities. But there did come a time when they were talking about the um, whether or not they were going to be able to have the votes and or the package available for the DHS funding before Friday's date. And it did not look good as of yesterday, Tuesday. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's actually a bill put up for a vote. I do know that later today, which the vote might have already happened while we're on now, there is going to be a vote for the Save Act. So it's going to be interesting to see if it's going to be something that's party lines, or if we're going to see Republicans actually jump side and join the Democrats.
Will be
And then,
interesting to see.
yeah,
I really do agree with a lot of the idea that, I mean, first of all, I'll just say this. Any kind of federal efforts to really control state elections is unconstitutional. You could argue that federal government requiring ID is just, makes sense. And honestly, I kind of agree that it just makes sense for elections to require ID. So the state should pass that law.
yeah,
The
the state
federal
should pass the
government
law and
the
shouldn't be
federal
something you have to
government cannot control what states do with their election. It's in the
Yes.
Constitution. So unless Congress wants to go 66% and amend the Constitution, which with the current House and Senate, it is not going to happen, then I would like to see where these things go and how they fall in court.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
even we've seen, even with Trump appointed judges, that they are willing to go against Trump when they believe it's unconstitutional. And I mean, a lot of people would just try to think that just because Trump may have appointed them, that they have some kind of allegiance to him. But we've even seen Kavanaugh, in the most famous example, go against Trump with the argument against being able to fire independent commissioners, saying, "Well, if we approve of this and say this is something that the executive branch can do, then when the executive branch changes parties to the Democrats, then the Democrats will do the exact same thing that we don't want them to do, but we want to do." And he said it right then there. He was like, this is just going to be a game of every 4 or 8 years. We just change independent commissioners. That's not how we progress as a country, nor is that a
Yeah,
good idea.
no, no, not at all.
And I'm really interested to see what they do with the tariffs in the summer. But
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I don't. I mean, if if they take it up in the summer, they could football it until
kick it back down
next.
to the
Yeah,
yeah.
kick it back until next year, or just not make it within the docket for the year for the Supreme Court. And as I was saying, we're going to tie into the governor's invite for the Trump meeting, and also all of the election concerns with immigration, ICE reforms, and the funding battles. So as we know, congressional Democrats are intensifying demands for reforms to immigration and customs enforcement amid escalating funding disputes for the Department of Homeland Security, risking a partial government shutdown. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer announced that Democrats will block further short-term funding resolution for DHS beyond Friday, insisting on substantial ICE overhauls as Republicans have not met their conditions, heightening tensions and negotiations. This stance is bolstered by an NBC poll indicating 72% of Americans support changes to ICE, with 43% favoring reform and 29% abolishing ICE. Following public disapproval of Trump's deportation policies after ICE agents killed 2 Americans in Minneapolis, contemplating this, a Canto Institute study reveals immigrants consume less welfare than native born Americans across all income levels and programs, with immigrants in poverty in various areas of economic stances showing lower participation rates, challenging narratives of immigrant dependency. Internal DHS data further shows that less than 14% of nearly 400,000 ICE arrests in Trump's first year involved violent criminals, under 2% for homicide or sexual assault, and 2% for gang affiliations, undermining claims of prioritizing dangerous offenders. Democrats are pushing for body cameras, which are a list of the demands. And one of those demands are actually, which I thought was incredibly smart, is not to have ICE agents at polling places or places of, I think, places of governance or things of that nature. I forget the wording that they used, but polling places was included in that language, which is very smart on a thinking of like a legality and legislative reasoning wise. But as they are pushing for body cameras on all ICE agents for accountability, there are privacy concerns which have prompted calls to restrict usage to prevent surveillance of protesters via facial recognition, shifting demands amid broader reform negotiations. In a recent escalation, Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries rejected a White House counterproposal on ICE restrictions as incomplete and insufficient, failing to address lawless conduct with a 10-item demand list, including warrants for private property entry and body camera mandates. Internal frustrations have completely boiled over, with House Democrats criticizing Schumer's negotiations, with one representative repeatedly urging him to get the hell out amid recurring dissatisfaction with bipartisan compromises on shutdown threats. Now, those members are more so the progressive leaning individuals and camp within the Democratic Party who do not feel that Chuck Schumer is going far enough. But as just putting on my moderate hat here, I feel like he is doing as best as he can to try to get these top 10 items included into the DHS funding bill. I do appreciate his strong stance on not wanting to fund the short term stopgap bill, continuing resolution for DHS funding, as they have the votes to block it. So the Republicans are going to have to try to concede in some way to some of those 10 items that they want. So hopefully there is a common ground here that's seen on both sides of the aisle, so that things of this nature can just get funded and we aren't having partial government shutdowns for the next few weeks as these negotiations continue to happen. And as I was saying earlier, they're shaky at the moment as of Tuesday. So we will see by Friday if there is anything new and ongoing. But it's very much of a higher ground that that Democrats have to stand on this issue, just given all the data that I have just shared, as well as sentiment, as public sentiment out there regarding ICE and the immigration reforms that a lot of individuals do want to see across the aisle.
I mean, I'll I'll add this as as a radical. I don't want to. If I was a politician in this instance, I would be working on being more pragmatic and taking the wins you can get. As a radical non-politician, I will say that I am not going to give credit to Chuck Schumer for anything as long or any politician as long as they continue to keep being gung ho for Israel. I mean, we even saw. I know this is unrelated fully to the topic, but just Schumer himself said like one of his primary goals in Congress is to continue to get funding for Israel. Now, where I think this leads to the progressives in where the moderates such as Schumer stand is that they do need to work together in order to continue to kind of put an end, being able to block what the Republicans want to do, especially in the Senate, where we've seen Democrats like Fetterman, that oversized hunk of junk, trying to help the Republicans basically every single time, because for whatever not for whatever reason, for ideological reasons, they agree more with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's very clear how much ICE it has gone off the deep end under Christy Noam. She's no longer the head, correct? It is now.
No, she's still the head. It's just the she's the secretary. So she's a
Ah,
cabinet member, so she is still going to be the head. So what had changed was that Po I forget his name, Povich or whatever his name is. He was relinquished of duty and he was demoted, while Tom Homan has now stepped in and he is the now new top
that
top person who's been more professional.
that's
I
what I
think if
was
they
thinking
started
of.
with him to begin with, we would not we would not be at this situation. I mean,
I
he's
mean,
a
I
hard,
think
tough guy. He talks tough, but I think he has very professional intentions, and the way he goes about things is more professional and not theatrics and not
from what I've
talking
heard
tough.
him say, it is definitely much more professional and
So much more
focused
professional.
compared
He
to the.
understands the fears of Minnesota community and what was going on. He even said months ago in his press conference, I think it was last week, that he said that if the rhetoric did not slow down, that there would be tragic deaths, and he was
He
exactly
was
right on
right.
that.
I
I
mean,
mean, he
we've seen
was.
ICE agents fully act out of control. I mean, we've even seen that. We've seen them threaten to murder people. We have seen them murder people. And what I think is the funniest thing about this all, when I was in DC the other day, and you may have seen this too when you were down there, Mikkel, it was NRA posters going against ICE. And I was like, wow, wow. The NRA
Yeah,
against
man.
ICE. I couldn't believe it. But it makes sense. I mean, you have ICE and the president saying this rhetoric of, well, he had a weapon. Of course, he was a threat. He should, of course, you don't bring a weapon to a protest. Clearly, you're trying to murder people if you're bringing a weapon to a protest.
But
And
praise
it's
Kyle
like what?
Rittenhouse.
Bringing a weapon anywhere now makes you capable of being murdered because it's dangerous. So, what about all the open carries? What about every single person who owns a gun and carries it for self protection? Now they're a threat who can be put down by federal law enforcement or law enforcement in general just because they deem them a threat. No, no. And I think that I would love to be a fly in the wall of when like Trump meets with his cabinet and Stephen Miller and Rubio, because I would love to see how much of this is Trump actually saying this stuff or Stephen Miller and co saying it and then Trump just going with it because he doesn't really care.
I could
Honestly, he
definitely
cares.
see Stephen Miller just I could see him like on his shoulder. Stephen Miller like a
Yeah,
little elf, a little
like creeping his
devil
hands
angel
like
there.
President Donald Trump.
Kind of like what's his name from The Simpsons?
Yeah,
What's his
yeah,
name? The
yeah.
old guy. I forget what his name actually is, but that's what he really.
Burns,
Yeah,
Burns.
Mr. Burns. Yeah, that's what he really does remind me of. And I hope it comes soon enough that as this polling and data continues to come out about how the arrests that they're doing for immigrants aren't even violent convictions or even in violent individuals, and we see that the support is dwindling across the board on this issue.
Oh
We
yeah,
may see
and this is a
individuals being
key
kicked out
Trump
left and right.
issue.
Yeah, when we see individuals being
Immigration,
kicked off.
crime, and the economy are the
Yeah.
3 reasons why Trump won. He's completely lost immigration and the economy.
And I'm actually happy you said that because those are going to be the last two things that we talk about today that actually go that coincide real nicely and will tie up this whole conversation. So as you're saying with economic indicators and fiscal projections, the U.S. economy actually showed mixed signals with the January jobs report additions exceeding expectations, but revisions indicated stalled growth in 2025 alongside projections of rising national debt under current policies. Employers added 130,000 jobs in January, lowering unemployment to 4.3% from 4.4%, driven by sectors like healthcare through hospitality and manufacturing saw minimal gains as well. So there was an annual revision revealed only 181,000 jobs were added in 2025, which is far below initial estimates of 584,000 and the 1.46 million in 2024, signaling a huge weakness amid trade wars, immigration crackdowns, and government cuts. Fiscal projections warn Trump's policies, including the One Big Beautiful Bill, could elevate national debt to 120% of GDP by 2036, with annual deficits nearing 2 trillion or 6% of GDP, exacerbated by 4.7 trillion in added deficits from tax measures potentially offset by 3 trillion in tariff revenue.
And
So
you know
as
who's gonna
we're
have to deal with that? Us.
yeah, we're all going to have to
Trump
end
and
up
his
dealing with it.
generation are literally gonna die over the next 10 years. They're like, "We don't need this anymore. We're gonna suck everything out of the economy and out of the country just so we can line up our own
Yes.
pockets."
Yeah, I saw a
Oh my
report that
god.
the big beautiful bill has added I believe it was $1,000 or around 1,300 to individual Americans when it comes to how much they were spending out of their pocket due from these tariffs. So I do hope the Supreme Court does knock them down. And now with that new rule blocked, I do hope Democrats do stand up and have a debate over these tariffs, over the legality of these tariffs, over the harm of these tariffs, over whatever benefit these tariffs are bringing. Because if there is benefit, it is important to at least point that out, as well as important to point out the deficiencies with what's going on the tariff front and on the global market front as well, because actually Pam Bondi started talking about the Dow Jones and everything
In the
when
Nasdaq.
yeah, the
Right?
Nasdaq
Imagine
for
your
some reason
defense.
talking about
Imagine be imagine that. Like you're trying to ask questions about the systematic rape of American children and sex trafficking of them. And then the person who's supposed to be responsible for it says, "Look at the Nasdaq though. Look how good the stock market's doing. What are you guys so mad about?" I'm
yeah,
like,
I
this
just don't
is
get it.
it's pathetic and sick.
That's completely pathetic and sick, and that's
I,
why they're
I'm
seeing yeah,
I'll be rooting the day she goes to jail. Like there's very few people who I'm waiting to die to celebrate to die for. Ratko Mladic is one of them. This woman going to jail is the second one. I don't care if she dies, but her going to jail, I think it's absolutely necessary.
I think it's necessary as well. I mean, the lack of transparency, the lack of like as I tell my Republican friends who voted for Trump, it feels like they had the wool pulled over their eyes and they're really not getting what Trump was selling in his first term. When I was in DC, I was talking to individuals. I'm like, you saw in his first term, it seemed like he obviously was for the forgotten American, the blue collar American. But now we have seen that the billionaire class has fully taken, well, the billionaire Epstein class
Oh yeah.
and Zionist class, we can even say, have taken a very firm grip over this administration. We're seeing this with a lot of the polls approval, with the polls, approval polls, and public sentiment, with public opinion surveys revealing significant challenges for President Trump and Republicans as these midterms are approaching, with approval ratings declining among key demographics. A Rasmussen poll, which Muhammad has stated multiple times, is a more favorable Republican and
This
Trump leaning pollster.
This one is even worse than the last
Oh,
one, and
it's
the
so worse than
last
the last
one
one.
was a historic low for the
Yeah,
Republican president. It just keeps getting worse.
it's very worse. And in this survey, and often favorable to Trump, shows a 56 disapproval of his performance, with 48% believing Joe Biden did a better job as president compared to 40% favoring Trump, marking a huge shift and underscoring voter dissatisfaction. Trump's approval is also negative among white voters at 47%. Well, 47 approve and 50% disapprove, a reversal from this typical supportive group, which is echoing a lot of the findings that New York Times was able to find. And this is going to pose a major risk for the midterms, as we're seeing a lot of these individuals turn their back to Trump, feeling that Trump has turned their back on them. And we've seen it happen time and time again at the ballot box with all of these races. As I was saying, there was a Trump 13 district that has now turned Democratic. We've seen in Florida with the mayor race. So we're seeing a lot of rebuking of the Trump administration, a lot of the things that they are doing. Republicans are starting to see the cracks and starting to either jump off the ship or are starting to join Democrats in the level of resistance and or containment they can do out of a lot of the policies that Trump is trying to enact in a lot of legislation these members of Congress are inputting and or introducing into Congress. So as all of these developments that we've talked about today continue to develop, we do hope that our listeners do continue to come to Behind the Ballot. And I know this is a Wednesday that we are on, and it's usually Tuesday and Thursday, but we are expanding our days to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Hopefully, that expands our reach and makes it easier for our listeners to chime in and listen to all of the great, engaged, balanced, and informative news that we are bringing to our guests.
Yeah.
Mohammed?
So yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6:30 to 7:30 is the ideal goal. Friday we're trying to reserve more for interview guests as well. So
Yes.
those maybe just be recorded sessions if the people aren't comfortable with going live. But I kind of do want to try to get these people live because it would be good to be able to get them live so people can actually ask them questions. You
Yeah,
know?
so I had a very cool idea about like it's going to be hard to pull off, but I think as we have like one or two more candidates that are still running in 2026, we could actually have almost a virtual town hall,
Yeah, I
honestly.
saw you message me about
So
that. That
I
would be
think
cool.
like having from different areas, just talking about midterms, what are they doing to prepare to prop themselves up in separation from the individual that they're running against? What are certain issues that they have seen have been strong for them? Tactic, things of that nature, just a starting idea, or as the Trump administration would say, have a framework of an idea. So until that gets on paper, I'll be
A
sure
framework
to
of an
share
idea.
more with Muhammad, and hopefully we will continue to heighten up Behind the Ballot and continue to structurally put together ballot line strategies as this whole year gets rolled out. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into Behind the Ballot, where we keep politics engaged, balanced, and informative. Stay curious, stay critical, and please, please, please stay involved. I'm Mikhail Jenkins, and until next time, keep looking beyond the headlines and behind the ballot.
I hope you all have a great night. God bless America. God bless you three listening in right now. And take it easy until next time. Bye bye, everybody.